The grand hall shimmered with gold and white, every detail perfectly arranged, roses cascading down tall glass vases, crystal chandeliers scattering light across the polished floor, and soft music drifting through the air. Guests whispered with excitement, cameras ready to capture the moment. At the center of it all stood Emma, her ivory gown flowing like a river of silk, a delicate veil framing her glowing face. Her hands trembled slightly, but her smile was wide, her eyes locked on the aisle where the man she loved was supposed to appear. Daniel, charming, successful, and kind, had been everything she'd dreamed of. Today was supposed to be the day they sealed their love in front of everyone who mattered. The music shifted to a graceful pause, the signal that the groom would enter. Every head turned toward the grand doors. But the doors stayed closed. The pause stretched longer than it should. The soft chatter began to shift into hushed murmurs, curious glances darting between the guests. Emma's smile faltered, just for a moment, before she forced it back, telling herself he was only delayed. Maybe a last-minute adjustment, maybe a nervous breath. Minutes passed. The whispers grew. A faint knot formed in her stomach, each second tightening it. Her father stepped closer, worry flickering in his eyes. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, her joy now laced with unease. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, but she couldn't yet imagine just how much this day was about to change. The bridal suite was silent now, stripped of the laughter and music that had filled it just hours earlier. The half-empty champagne glasses sat untouched on the table, petals from Emma's bouquet scattered across the floor like forgotten promises. She sat in front of the mirror, still in her gown, the train pooled around her like a heavy cloud. Her makeup was smudged, not from the heat or the long day, but from the slow, steady tears she had tried to hide. Her phone lay beside her, its black screen showing no new messages. She had called Daniel's number more times than she could count, each attempt met with the same hollow ring before going to voicemail. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. Outside the door, the staff moved quietly, packing away centerpieces, rolling up tablecloths, sweeping up confetti meant for a celebration that never came. The guests had gone home hours ago, their faces etched with awkward sympathy as they left, unsure what words could possibly ease such a moment. Emma stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the moment she dreamed of since she was a little girl. Instead, it felt like the ground had fallen away beneath her, leaving her suspended in a place between disbelief and heartbreak. She replayed every memory of him in her mind, searching for signs she had missed, unable to understand why the man who promised her forever had simply vanished. 2 days passed in a blur of unanswered questions and sleepless nights. Emma's phone finally rang, the unfamiliar number breaking the heavy silence of her apartment. Her hands shook as she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. On the other end was Mark, Daniel's closest friend. His tone was urgent but gentle. "Emma, you need to come to St. Jude's Hospital. Now." The hospital corridors smelled faintly of disinfectant and carried the low hum of machines and distant voices. Emma's heels clicked against the linoleum as she followed Mark down the long hallway, her heart pounding harder with every step. They stopped outside a room, and Mark hesitated before pushing the door open. Inside, Daniel lay in a hospital bed, pale against the white sheets, an oxygen tube resting under his nose. The strong, confident man she'd known looked fragile, his eyes dim but still holding a trace of the warmth she remembered. "I didn't run away from you," he said weakly, his voice breaking. I collapsed that morning. I've been hiding something, Emma. For months, I've known I have a serious heart condition. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel trapped, or to spend your life caring for a sick man. I thought, if I left, you could be free to live your life without this burden. Tears welled in her eyes as the truth sank in. The pain she'd felt these past 2 days shifted, no longer from betrayal, but from the weight of his sacrifice. Rain tapped gently against the hospital window, the soft sound filling the quiet room. Emma sat beside Daniel's bed, her fingers wrapped around his, the steady beeping of the heart monitor a constant reminder of the fragility of the moment. His face was still pale, his body weaker than she'd ever seen, but his eyes. Those familiar, kind eyes, searched hers with uncertainty, as if afraid she might walk away. "You don't get to decide what's too much for me," she said softly, her voice trembling but firm. "Loving you isn't a burden, Daniel. It's my choice. And I choose you, all of you, even the hard parts." He tried to speak, but emotion caught in his throat. Emma stayed, day after day, through every test, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. She read him his favorite books, brought flowers to brighten the sterile room, and made him laugh when the weight of his illness became too heavy. Slowly, his strength began to return. The color came back to his cheeks, his voice grew steadier, and hope replaced the fear in his eyes. Their love deepened in those quiet days, stripped of grand gestures and lavish plans. It was no longer about a perfect wedding or the life they had imagined, but about simply being together, hand in hand, no matter how uncertain the future might be. In that hospital room, without music, without flowers, they found a love stronger than the one they had planned to celebrate. The sun filtered softly through the branches of an old oak tree, casting dappled light across the small garden. Rows of white chairs were neatly arranged, but only a handful of them were filled, just family, a few close friends, and the people who had stood by them through the hardest months. The air smelled faintly of fresh blossoms, and a gentle breeze carried the sound of birdsong. Daniel stood beneath a simple wooden arch draped with wildflowers, healthier now, his suit modest but perfectly pressed. He watched as Emma walked toward him, her dress simple and elegant, her smile radiant in a way no diamonds or grand halls could ever match. There was no crowd of strangers, no flashing cameras, no towering venue, only the quiet certainty of two people who had fought to be here. When she reached him, Daniel took her hands, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "I thought love was about giving you the best of everything I could buy. But you showed me it's about giving the best of myself, even when I'm at my weakest." Emma's eyes glistened. "And you showed me that forever isn't promised, it's chosen, every single day." They exchanged vows that were raw, honest, and filled with gratitude, sealing them with a kiss as the breeze rustled the flowers above. The applause was soft, but it was the kind that comes from hearts deeply moved. In that moment, they knew they didn't need a perfect beginning, just a love strong enough to last through anything.